Hi, everyone. This is Vincenzo Berghella. Again, another sessions of AJOGM FM Live, but more importantly, the Extraordinaire within you. We have an extraordinary guest today, and Kavina Rang is my co-host and literally the leader here. So I'm going to give it to you, Kavita, to introduce our host or guest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vince, and welcome Dr. Judette Lewis, who is our very special, extraordinary guest today. So just for our listeners, Dr. Lewis is the chair of the OBGYN department at USF in Tampa. She is also a past president of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine and is the present chair of the publications committee for the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine as well. We're so happy that you could join us with us today, Judette. And, just for our listeners as well, I just wanted to share a little bit of the mission and the whole goal of doing this podcast. We hear all about these amazing success stories, such as yourself, especially as junior faculty. And we always think, wow, how did they do it? And that was the whole point that inspired me to start this Extraordinary live stream series, where we get to hear your stories and be able to share what is the mindset that helps you navigate all the challenges, all the ups and downs in your careers. What are the strengths that led you to where you are today? Essentially, it's just a global platform for mentorship for all of us to share stories and take inspiration from one another.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I am honored, first of all, but also love the concept of this, of really providing mentoring on a wider scale for those who may not have it.
Awesome. Thank you. And, Vince and I have this tradition that we've done, for several of our series with AJOG MFM, that we start all our sessions with gratitude, because that's the beautiful way to start anything, right? So, Judette, since you are our special guest today, maybe I'll let you take it away, maybe share something you're grateful for. And then, Vince, you can go next and then I can take over.
Yeah. So those who know me know that I am the mom of former preemie twins. They were born at 25 weeks. And yesterday, my son got his first college acceptance.
Congratulations.
So often in MFM, we don't see the long-term outcome. And so that's a long-term outcome that my 25-weeker got his first college acceptance. And I'm super excited.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. That's awesome. Vince, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, people know that I have, two older kids and two younger kids. They're all doing great. I guess today I'm going to be grateful for my wife, who actually sees on OBGYN at CHOP and works in the special delivery unit there. And a video just came out, they did a case of a cardiac teratoma. They operated in uterus at 25 weeks, and then she delivered near term. And the baby is doing great, which is amazing. They did a hysterotomy, and then the baby got, and she was one of her first C-sections at CHOP as an obstetrician with that kind of case. So I'm very grateful for the fact that she found kind of a place to use her talents and where her talents are also recognized. So I'm very happy for that.
Congratulations. That's
Thanks.
awesome. Yeah, and I think for me, my gratitude is actually along the same theme, as family and women's health, right? So today I'm actually streaming in from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here for the Critical Care and Obstetrics Conference, which my husband is actually leading this year as the director of the conference. And, we've been long distance for a while because of work, but, finally getting to see him again after several weeks. So really grateful to be able to be together and to be surrounded by leaders in our field who are teaching this amazing course to help us take care of the sickest moms around the country. So I'm grateful for all of that. So now that, everyone's got a chance to share their beautiful gratitude, to our listeners, as you're listening, I hope you're also thinking about something that you're grateful for in this moment, because that is truly the most powerful thing you have to feel good, in any given moment. And I like to jump right in. Before we start with all these amazing list of questions we have for Judette, I want to start off by sharing a story about how I met Judette. And Judette, I don't know if you recall this, but I will never forget this.
I never do. I never recall the stories.
Well, let me remind you. So I was a third-year resident, and in my residency program, and I wanted to go into maternal fetal medicine fellowship. So, but I came from an academic community kind of residency program, excellent program, Michigan State University. However, it was very busy time of the year, and none of my faculty could come with me to the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine meeting to network or introduce me to people. But I knew I wanted to match to MFM, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and try to network myself, just meet people. So I went there and I would walk around, and if I saw anyone had a badge, and this was in Dallas, Texas in Feb of 2018, and I would walk around, see anyone had this badge, with those ribbons saying faculty, and then I would sneak look at their name, Google them right away, and then walk up and say hi and introduce myself. And then so I did that to a few people. But then when I came across you, I walked up and I said, "Hi, Dr. Lewis. I'm Kavita. I'm a third-year resident. I'm hoping to apply for MFM fellowship." And you did not know me at all, but you stopped and you took the time and you talked to me. And I was with another friend of mine named Christine, who was also going to apply for MFM. And what you did in that moment really inspired me. You took a picture of us, the two of us, my friend and I, and you said, "Wait, stop, you guys. I love how you're networking. Let me grab a picture of you." And later that day, you were giving a talk to the residents who are
Her connection is not. I know she's in an hotel and we're live. I'm sure she's gonna come back. I can take over, Judette.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll. I didn't know that story.
Remember that story?
Remember?
Yeah, I actually remember that story because I was at. Then later, I did incorporate their picture into my lecture to say, here's an example of two residents who were networking, because I thought it was such a bold move. And representative of something, that has been the key to my success, is to recognize that, you have to make things happen for yourself. And here they were, two residents really trying to make things happen for themselves.
Unless you believe in yourself, nobody else will. That's I always say that. I guess one of the first questions I like to ask Judette and let you talking is, and I'm sure Kavita will reconnect, is what in your childhood, shaped who you are, if it was a parent or where you were, or a teacher or some other parent, or just that's your background in general. How did that help you shape to where you got today?
Yeah, when I think about that, I think of my sort of the striking memories of my childhood, and I think one of them was my dad. And he was a truck driver, and he would get up at 4 to 5 a.m. And he would work out before he went to work, and it was cold. It was New Jersey. It was cold. And I used to think, wow, I don't want to have to get up at 4 to 5 a.m. Right. And so that was one of my earliest memories about, trying to decide what I would do. And then over time, I realized I just love to teach. And so I remember having conversations with my parents, who were Haitian immigrants. And if you're any immigrant knows, what do they push you to do? Medicine, right? Because they feel it's recession proof. It's, it's safe. And so my parents said, well, you could be a doctor who teaches, right? And so that really planted the seed of oh, this is the expectation. I'm the firstborn child, right? I have to do something along that path. Luckily for me, I ended up loving it. But I don't know what would have happened if I didn't. But that's what planted the seed of where I would go. I think also watching their struggles made me want to succeed. So I always felt the burden, the weight of their sacrifices, that I wanted to make sure I honored that. And so that, regardless, I think I would have been, I would have achieved a certain amount of success because I felt the weight of that.
I'll follow up and then I'll give it back to you, Kavita. It's interesting. We didn't plan it this way, but Kavita is from Thailand, with the background, last time we did Cynthia, and African, Ghana background, and I didn't realize, I knew, I guess, some of it, but how much do you think that immigrant, parents and shaped you to that in particular, and also related to that, maybe actually having a truck driver that woke up so early and clearly was working hard. It doesn't matter what they're doing, but if they're doing it with passion,
Mhm.
I've always been surprised that drive can come from somebody doing anything as long as they're doing it with passion.
Yeah, and he did it out of a sense of responsibility to his family, and a part of him did enjoy it too. But I think watching that, also being the child of, or being first generation, meant I got to observe cultural differences, and I had to flex between them and navigate between, what the culture within my home and then the culture outside. I did live in Haiti for 6 years and would go back every summer. And so just, incorporating parts of that culture, which is very centric on family. We joke about how like Haitians expect you to never move out, and then you'll be 26 and they're like, why aren't you married? Right. So I think that strong sense of family and that strong sense of obligation to family was important in making me who I am. But there's also a strong sense of helping each other. So all throughout my childhood, there was always someone who had just immigrated over, and we needed to have them live with us and help them until they could get on their feet, get a job, and things like that. That was really that didn't stop until maybe around my teen years. And so then you're raised with a sense of obligation to help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And first of all, I just want to apologize. I think my internet was a little glitchy, but I think I'm good now. Yeah. And, Judette, when you share all that, I wonder how has that, now being on that side of receiving that, how has that shaped your parenting now? Because I know like you said, you have 2 children, and, what's your parenting style? How have you modified that into their upbringing here?
Yeah. Haitian parenting is harsh. It was, right. There was the expectation of perfection I felt growing up. I don't have those expectations of my children. And, for a number of reasons, right? I do think that having preemie twins was a level setting, right? That your expectations change, that you like. So I'm just so grateful for every little thing. Although I will push back on my son, who will say to me, a C is average. And I'm like, no. Right? Not in this household. So I think I'm a softer parent in that I try to give them room to be for their own individuality. I seek to understand and to try and really tailor to who they are, and they are 2 different kids. I can do it because I only have 2. I think it's harder as you have more children. I think I've done a good job at, my husband and I have done a good job at setting some core principles. And we're told, at least when we go to the school, that they are really good humans. And so we're proud of that.
I love that you say that they're good humans. I think that's eventually the success of parenting, right? That you raise good people out into the world. And, you shared this story about like you had 25-week preemies. Where were you in your training? Were you in medical training? Like, how do you navigate that? Because I can think about so many of our trainees right now, or like residents or fellows like my age, where they're probably having children and they have these big career goals and aspirations. And some might feel like, how can I do that while So what was that journey like for you, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I met my husband in residency, and we got married my first year of MFM fellowship. And then and I had the twins. Before I had the twins, I actually had a pre-viable PPROM at 22 weeks with sepsis that then I had to be induced. And that was very hard, right? Like that's, because this was, my everyday life. And, and I felt like up until then I did everything society asked of me, right? Like I went to school, I, got married. I did, I was a good citizen or whatever. And so it was really hard to go through that. And then to go back to work after having this tragic loss. And then I found myself pregnant with twins, which was terrifying, because if I couldn't, hold one, how do I hold 2? Eventually I went through what my mentor, Brian Mercer, called being a classic MFM boards case, with, cerclage, because back then we didn't know about cerclage in twins. progesterone, right? Because we didn't know back then whether progesterone would help.
Wow.
Cervical shortening at 18 weeks, antepartum admission, all of that, and delivered at 25 weeks. And it was interesting because at that moment when I delivered, everyone was so scared for us, but my husband and I, we felt hope. We felt like at least this time we had a fighting chance, as opposed to having a 22-weeker back in 2006. We didn't have a fighting chance, but at least with a 25-weeker, we had a fighting chance. You never want to go through that journey, but without a doubt, it made me a better person, a better doctor, a better parent, because of the lessons that I learned. And like I said, how it shifted priorities and it shifted my expectations.
Can I follow up on that? Thanks for sharing such a personal story. How, as a doctor, how did that change counseling, approach to patients, degree of empathy? You can certainly relate to some of the stories we live every day in a much different way.
Well, prior to that, you go based on, what you're taught and what you see in the literature. I actually became a lot more optimistic because when I was admitted in antepartum, the thing that I hated the most, other than that horrible antepartum bed, was when the medical team would come in and the pity in their eyes and the negativity in their eyes. So I hated it so much that I started pretending I was asleep when they would come in for rounds because I was fighting to stay positive. And to hope. And so seeing, and I don't fault them. I think some of it was compassion because I was one of them, right? One of them going through this thing. And so I think some of it was compassion, but I saw it as pity and thinking I wouldn't make it. And I needed to be able to hold up a wall of positivity around me and the kids. And so I used to pretend I was asleep. And sometimes I would even throw in a fake snore just to try and make it seem realistic. It's what worked for me. It got me through.
Wow. No, and how old are your kids now, Judette? Because you said they just matched college, so they're...
Yeah, they turn 18 next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, so back to your question, Vince. So when I counsel, I always have to be careful to not, to stick to what we know, like stick to the facts, stick to the outcomes that we know. Because I had a positive experience, it's easy to give people hope that they shouldn't have. But I try to stick to the data where if I see that they need to know that there could be good outcomes, I also give them that piece too. But I do try to, because it's a ethical thing. And actually I wrote an ethics piece in JAMA Ethics about it, about self-disclosure and how you don't want to give patients a false sense of hope. You also don't want to persuade them to do things, but I do think it's important for us to present the whole spectrum, but we often don't have the whole spectrum because we as MFMs often don't see this, the story out to 17 or 18 years. We see it out to when we hand off the baby or until the baby is discharged from the NICU. And so if there's, I have plenty of messages, but one of them to, MFMs who are watching this is to keep that in mind, that your definition of success may not be my definition of success. That when they say, intact survival, like what that means for you versus what that means for me may be different. And to keep that in mind, that, ultimately the honest truth is that many of them have moved on and don't remember us. With the exception of my MFM, Sean Blackwell, who I will always love and be so grateful for. But most of them don't remember us, right? But, we live out that future and it continues to, we continue to live with those decisions that we made.
Wow. That's so beautiful. And I think that's such a powerful message, to share. And thank you so much for sharing that. And while going through all of that, raising your children and then having a career, how did you kind of navigate the balance of doing both so successfully? Like, was there some, what was your maybe moral compass or some values that you used that guided you through that journey?
Yeah. Before having my kids, MFM was fun. It was something that it was, something I was passionate about clinically. But then I got to live the real life experience of the benefit of science, right? So, my 25 weekers who were, on IV caffeine, or who, I had betamethasone, that it was not lost upon me that my 25 weekers were doing well as a result of science. And so then I felt now even more convicted than ever that what I was doing was important to other families, and that I had an obligation to contribute to science. And so, not only did I love teaching, but that I had to keep my hand in research somehow to pay it forward, because I had benefited so much from it.
Wonderful. Wow. So you basically use your own personal journey to fuel your drive even more. And I think that, and that's so beautiful, right? Because that, when it comes from a personal space, I think that's kind of your why. You talk about this a lot, that you're very passionate about finding your why. Is this kind of maybe a part of like your why, right? From a personal place to getting to doing what you're doing every day?
Absolutely, because it gets hard, right? You can't, when your kids are young, it's hard. And, in full disclosure, I had family as support. So my mom came and said, okay, you will, I will help you with childcare. So that's where the benefit of the Haitian family and culture comes into play, right? On the one hand, they won't let you move out. But on the other hand, when you do move out and get married, then they move in with you. So still not in state. But it helps with childcare, especially when my kids were super young. And it was good for them to have that love around them, because here's the other thing that a lot of MFMs don't know. There's a lot of clear data about outcomes and neuroplasticity, of preemies after delivery, and how the home environment and the stimulation makes a difference in outcomes. And so she was crucial to helping us achieve that, even though we were both physicians. So that helps. The other thing that helped was really making sure that I knew my why, like you said, because it gets hard. It gets hard when your children are sick and you're supposed to be working, or as the experience I had, where you have, and this is a whole other piece, where you have a new diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder, and you're battling your own health and work and preemie kids. How do you navigate all of that, and what do you prioritize? And I think it's so important for everyone to understand that I don't think you're going to always succeed at all things at the same time. And sometimes I had to prioritize one over the other, almost like a juggling game, right? You're not always going to have all the balls in your hand. Some of them will be up in the air and you're sort of ignoring them for a bit while you focus on the others. And that's what I had to do in order to keep moving forward. And that sometimes the moving forward was slow and incremental, and other times it was fast. It just depended on what was going on.
I want to follow up on that issue of why, Judette, you kind of found your why. Kavita said it beautifully, the experiences kind of multiplied your drive and your interest and the science, etc. But a lot of people look at you, as a mentor, and I think a lot of people in the country want to work with you, for you. You have kids, you were talking about how you find the why in your kids and what they want to do, which I think is very important. And I see the kids and the residents and the fellows sometimes as similar. Like, I learn with my kids and I use it with the residents and fellows. I read for the fellows and I use it in the kids. So what do you look into? How do you mentor? How do you look at somebody's why? What's your way to address that in trainees, in young MFMs?
It's so fascinating to me, and probably something that I first discovered as a division chief, was to ask them what brings them joy and what brings them pain. And it's fascinating how many people have never thought about it in that way. Because I think if you think about those things, it helps you to understand yourself and understand what it will take to make you feel good most days. I use it with trainees to help them figure out, should they go into private practice or should they, stay in academics? Because so many are choosing when they've never experienced private practice, right? I use it with, faculty who are experiencing burnout. If we were to adjust your schedule, what should it look like so that you had joy most of the days? And it's different for everyone. It's like a snowflake. Like, I've never found two people that needed the same sort of composition and makeup. So that's where I start with them. And then I go to the piece of, well, what is the price you're willing to pay for that? Because that's the other piece people don't understand or appreciate, that no matter what you choose, there's a price for it. And if you're not willing to pay the price, then maybe you need to choose something different. Or if or at least going into it with that expectation. So I choose academics, right? As I say, I'm an academic lifer. It's where I'm my happiest. Well, there's a price for that, right? And that price is often that, as soon as, a resident sees that I'm on vacation, I get an email or a text like, hey, did you do that paper? Oh, she's free now. So did you correct my abstract? Did you run my data? Right? That's a price. But a benefit of it is, the one of my whys is, that I want to make an impact, right? So one of the benefits is the fact that I make an impact. So the impact that I make on that trainee and helping them set up their career, I touch their life, right? I help them achieve a goal, but then I touch the lives indirectly of every patient they take care of beyond that. And so, I have this one former trainee who, without fail, every single year texts me or emails me a thank you. And it's a reminder, right, that I impacted this person for life. So I may have been annoyed in the moment when I got the text of, did you run the data yet? But I made an impact, a long-lasting impact.
I love that.
Yeah. I think just to emphasize something you said, and then I'll give back to you, Kavita, is I used to think everybody's the same. We are so different. Yeah. You said it so beautifully. You cannot mentor anyone the same way. Everybody's different, and it starts from them. Like, they're looking at what I have to say. I don't start saying anything. You tell me about your why, what what you think you're good at, you're not good, what you hate, what you don't hate. You said it beautifully. I think that message is lost, and people never kind of do the inside work journey to really find out. I can't just keep complaining or saying I don't want to do this. So what do I want to do? And once you find what you want to do, and you have a good mentor like you, then the sky's the limit. So
yeah. And I think it's important for them to know that this is true of all the leaders too. Right. There are no two leaders that I have seen that are identical. And so that helped me with my imposter syndrome to say, hey, this person is very successful, but the ingredients that make them up are A, B, C, D. This other person is very successful and their ingredients are X, Y, Z. So therefore, there's not a formula, to being successful. There's not a formula that you can be successful, and have a whole bunch of different attributes. It's okay. And that helped me with my imposter syndrome. And that's when it went away, really, was when I realized that and embraced that there isn't a formula as to what it should look like.
I love that. And as I'm sitting here with two incredible leaders, I just want to highlight that I think that's the core principle and a common denominator of all great leaders and mentors is your ability to help people see the light within themselves. Like, you're able to help show people their power, right? Like by asking those right questions and helping them think. And that's how you bring out the best in them. And then the core value you all share is creating positive impact, and it's a ripple effect. And I think that's what you realize. It's just like you impact one and then it just keeps spreading. I want to, when you talk about imposter syndrome, I just want to take a step back a little. When you first took your first leadership role, when somebody came into you like, okay, Judette, I want you to take this. How did you know, like, were you ever like, oh, am I the right person for this? How did you know that, yes, I can do this? Or how did you navigate that mindset, you know?
I'm going to change the question a little bit because for a reason, and a little bit long answer. One thing I came to realize, because so often when you ask leaders how they got into leadership or whatever, they will say, "Oh, I didn't want this. I was just, appointed." Like, now I call BS on that, right? Because if you look closely, often there were inklings earlier. So if I take my own journey, like, yeah, I remember in high school working at Burger King, and as a high schooler was promoted up to manager. So, right, they did that because I had leadership skills. And, and through the years, as you go through, right, I was class president, right? So there were things. I don't recall what made me seek those opportunities or get those opportunities. I can tell you the first time that in a leadership position where I was really nervous about whether I could do it or not is as department chair. So I did all these other leadership positions that often was because I was a doer and I would keep doing. And then often by the time I got the title, I had already been doing a lot of components of the work. But I think department chair was the one that it was like very different from what I had been doing. And I was not sure I could do it. That's for sure. I was not sure I could do it because there are so many components to department chair that are not my natural abilities and natural strengths, so I approached it like any other, like a medical thing, right? So if I wanted to do a new procedure, what do? I read up about it. I talk to people who do the procedure. And then I go out and do it. When I stumble, I go back and, look back at what went wrong. I get opinions from other people. And I think the mistake sometimes people make is they don't treat leadership the same way. That there are a lot of skills and competencies that you need that you don't naturally have them and you have to work at them, no matter how skilled of a leader you are. And so what has helped me is being mindful of that and trying to accumulate those skills and working on them over time. And then and then you may get it wrong. Like some of what I thought I needed, in this position, I only use a little bit. And then other skills I use a lot, like for instance, realizing, oh my gosh, someone wants money every single day. Every single day, someone comes in this office, either by email or in person, and they want something that costs money. So actually the skill I use the most is negotiation, right? Like, and I never would have thought that, and communication, right? Negotiation and communication. And I never would have thought that, but by being cognizant of it and, realizing that, then I can go back and work even further on those skills. And so actually right now I'm reading some book, I don't even remember the title of it, about how to be a super communicator,
Oh, yeah. I know.
So yeah, so that was the first time was as department chair.
That's awesome. So it's basically, I think what you're highlighting is that you're a lifelong learner. Even if you're a leader, you're always just going to be a learner. And when you're stepping into a new role, that fear, we all can navigate that just by being opening to learning again and saying, hey, I don't know this, but I'm going to go start it out and be open to feedback and keep improving. And I think that's what makes, that's wonderful. And, I think another thing I wanted to highlight for the listeners is I think when opportunities find you, it's very easy in that moment to be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, and to just say no, or to say, I don't know I can do this, but I believe in myself and I believe I can learn to do this and take on that challenge. Because when you're willing to take on that challenge, push past those fears of imposter, I don't know, that's when you level up to the next level and you meet your new strengths. I think we all have these baseline strengths, with the strengths test. I think we all have been to the SMFM leadership course, but it goes to say that we can still unlock new strengths that we didn't know we had, and so that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
And I just want to bring up also, sometimes even if you don't believe in yourself, if someone else believes in you, pause and
So
say,
true.
why do they believe in me, right?
So
So
true.
up until when I was named interim chair, I was saying I didn't want to be chair, but it was the outgoing chair who thought I should be the interim, and I had to say, well, why does he think I could do it? And really look deeply within.
Yeah, no, I love that you said, and then actually that goes back to when I was sharing my story early, the beginning, when we met at SMFM, and like you said, you didn't know me, but then you made a comment about, to me and say like, "Hey, great job for networking. You're going to do great." Like it's a small thing, but when you point out something in someone that you see in them, you help them believe in themselves, and that's what you did for me. So thank you.
You're welcome. I still believe it.
So true. I wanted to follow up to some of this discussion in terms of what do you think, Judette, are the most important attributes that people can have? We're talking about, being able to learn and uh, kind of catch possibilities and opportunities. But what are your core principles that you look into for someone, especially junior people?
Mhm.
What do you think are the ones that you admire the most, that you think are more helpful for a
Yeah.
personally successful career, not personally successful for me or you, but for them, for them to realize
Mhm.
their dreams.
I think it goes back to what you said, the internal journey of figuring out what it is that you want and why. Because I feel like those individuals are going to be more true to themselves.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times a faculty person will say to me, "Well, you want me to do X, Y, Z," and I'm like, "No, I never, I never expected that of you." Um, you know, um, uh,
Yeah.
but they were doing things based on what they thought others wanted of them. I find people just do best if they figure out what they want, who they are, and really lean into that. So I am equally proud of the person who gets amazing Press Ganey scores and their patients love them. I'm equally proud of them as I am of the person who gets the teaching awards, because it just means that you have leaned into something that you do well, or
Mhm.
something that's important to you, enough to reach that level of excellence. And I do think that's the most important thing, is to be true to who you are.
Yeah.
You also share that some of your principles are integrity,
Mhm.
authenticity, and gratitude. I don't know if you want to expand on those as
Yeah.
well. I found them to be so compelling.
Yeah.
It was something that I figured out later, a little bit later. Maybe I was maybe in my 40s. That there were certain patterns of things that I was not willing to do, or certain patterns of things that people said about me. And I used to joke about this at the SMFM Fellows Conference, how people would say, "Oh, with you, we know where we stand. Oh, you're a straight shooter," and I'm like, as if I don't know they're insulting me, right? But then I learned to lean into it, that actually it's a good thing, right? Yes, I am a straight shooter. Yes, people know where they stand with me, because I try to be authentic and transparent. I also noticed a pattern of, being the one looking around the room when things were being said by executives, or, corporate, or, things being planned, that I'm like, this is not the right thing to do, and not being afraid to speak up and say, this is not right, or can we think about the impact to the patient? And so a true compliment was one time when, like, one of the high up executives called me the organization's North Star. And that made me realize, what, that is something that's important, to be and to have. And if that's my role, that's okay. Do I pay a price for it? Sometimes I do. I had a 360 evaluation where, they made it clear that, sometimes they would prefer that I kept my mouth shut. And
You
that's,
should be proud of that. That's a medal on your jacket.
yeah. But at the end of the day, I felt like, it is important to me to be able to sleep at night.
Mhm.
And I'm a worrier, like a worrier, I ruminate about things, and I can sleep if I feel like I did the right thing, or that I advocated for people in the right way. Um, the gratitude is something that has helped me keep perspective when things are crazy around me. And throughout my life, at different times, things have been crazy. Whether it's you know, growing up in I wasn't in severe poverty, but like we didn't have a whole lot, right? Or having a new medical diagnosis that could have long-term implications, all while taking care of preemies that just came from the NICU, right? That I had to sort of go back and think to myself, okay, I can stay and really be immersed in the negative side of all of this. But what helped bring me out of it, and don't get me wrong, I did a whole lot of that too. But what eventually brought me out of it is remembering what are the things that I'm grateful for. And you know what? Yes, I do have this autoimmune condition. But the positive is I have this career where I can have good health insurance and I can, I can take care of myself. And, and I don't know what it looks like in the future. But at least for now, here are the things that I can do. I've been accused of having gratitude as my love language as a leader. And that's true. Like, it's so true. I can do anything for a long period of time, and all you have to say is thank you, which makes me very inexpensive. But it's funny to people who don't figure that out. And it's who I am. Other people need other things to feed their soul. But for me, it's just saying thank you and just expressing gratitude, whether it's me expressing it or someone expressing it towards me, is all that I need. And again, that's how we're all so different.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. You're kind of starting to share a little bit of these practices you have that help bring you joy outside of work. There are also a lot of people talk about having a great morning routine or a certain routine that helps you bring you joy outside of your work. Is there anything that Judette does for Judette that's like a great morning routine, or like an evening routine, or an afternoon routine that's like your time that fills your cup?
So as a sleep researcher, I will say the best quote I heard was when someone said on X that we've given morning people, too much power in this world. I'm not a morning person. I don't wake up, mentally until about 10 a.m., which is biological, people. It's biological,
So we did this podcast at a good time.
Biological. I'm more of a night owl, but what I do like to start my day with is, really is my children. For a really long time, I was able to, because of the school start time and my workday start time, I was able to arrange to drop them off at school, a couple days a week. And that was really important to me. It was a time to connect with them. So that's a morning routine, but I will say like a pattern of routine for me, not so much morning. So next time you should ask morning or evening routine.
Yes. The
evening routine is connecting with my husband. We're both physicians, so it's perverse. The evening connection is let's sit side by side and check our emails and finish our charting or whatever. But we would laugh, we'd talk about our day. He'd get me caught up on things that we needed to. I would get him caught up on my travel schedule, and I didn't realize it had become such an important thing to him until there were a few consecutive days where I was so busy that I was running into the evenings with chores and things like that. And I didn't do it. And he asked me, "Are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "No, what do you, he was like, "You haven't sat, at the computer, in a few nights." So I had to go back to doing it. But I think, again, it differs for everybody. Morning, evening, your kids, spouse, good friends. For a while, I had another leader that we would schedule morning walks, once a month. And that was a grounding thing, so I think just figuring out whatever works for you and knowing that it can be different. It doesn't look the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, another thing in that, Judette, is for us, certainly me, I'll talk about myself, I've gone through this for a few decades, in fact, is that things change over time, and maybe you can talk about that, how,
Mhm.
these things even, what fills your cups is going to change over time. Like, your kids are going to go to college, and,
Mhm.
uh, certainly the relationship with spouse hopefully grows, but if you water it, so to speak, if you
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
cherish it. And why don't you, can you talk about how things change over time, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, and they change based on a number of factors, right? What does your life look like? So the things that brought me joy when I was in college, right, I used to love to go to the clubs. I
So did
used
I.
to the club. I love to dance,
So did I.
right, right. I know
So
you
do
miss
I.
those things, right?
Still.
But now I can't stay up past a certain time, right? Like, so you have to be realistic.
Yeah.
I remember at one point, saying, "Oh, I used to love biking when I lived in Philly, right? I used to love
Yeah.
biking." And so, like, now it's years later, I'm out of residency fellowship. I have kids. I'm going to buy bikes and I'm going to go biking. Except it didn't really translate, right? Because I didn't have this inordinate amount of time to go biking for hours on end, right? So all this expensive equipment, thinking I would go back to my, med school days, it just didn't translate, and it wasn't as enjoyable as it used to be. So I think at any given stage, you have to look at realistically, who are you? What does your life look like? And what can you fit in that makes you happy? For me, in my later years, it's travel. I couldn't travel when I was younger. I had no money, but now I have some money. I can travel. And I derive a lot of joy from it. And so then the way that I incorporated it with my children, having a busy schedule with children, is saying, okay, we're going to see the 50 states. And so,
Wow.
we've seen 44 out of 50. COVID set us
Wow.
back a little bit. But it ended up incorporating things that were really important to me. It was, like, I love travel. I love seeing new places and seeing people. I love nature. So when we travel, we pick a state, that we fly into, rent a car, and we may see a couple states at a time, or three. We make sure we hit off the national parks, or we hike. We make sure we hit off something local, like where do the locals go to Saturday markets and things like that, so that you get a sense for the culture. So that incorporates nature, travel, culture, and it incorporates what was important to me, which is making sure that my children had a wider perspective. And that worked up until recently. Now we just want to do international travel, right? And so we have 6 states left. We couldn't finish it because our interests changed. Now
And
we're
there are
doing
200 plus countries, so that's a tall order to see the world.
now we're trying to hit off the continents, right?
Exactly.
And then I'm facing, now they're going to be leaving. So I actually did something funny, which, if we have any people my age watching, where I said, oh my gosh, my kids will be gone. And I spent a lot of time with them between, I volunteer with band and things like that. So I drive them around a lot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need friends. And so then, I went on a friend date. Like, there are people that you encounter that you're like, oh, we should get together. And then you never do. So I finally did get together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been married for 20 years. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like dating. Like, it was awkward. We, had to figure out where we were going to go. And, where do you want to go? No, where do you want to go? Like, it was interesting. So it's a different phase in my life, but again, it changes, and that's okay. But I think you just need to reassess, periodically, of, okay, what would make me happy, at this point, and try it. And if it doesn't make you happy, kind of like my expensive, like, oh, I'm going to get really good, biking equipment, you get rid of it, and, you start over.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's a lot of fun. And I think you travel, your mom joins you as well, right? Because I know you took a trip to Thailand and you went with the whole family. That was wonderful. Yeah. If you had to describe yourself in one word, what would it be? Just curious.
I struggle with this one.
We can come back to it.
So many things. I think in this moment, I think probably the one word is hopeful. Hopeful for myself, my family, and so many others. I think we can't do this session without really recognizing and acknowledging what's going on around us, and that for so many people are hurting. But this is where I go back to history and think of so many times where historically things weren't where we wanted them to be, but we were still able to make progress. And it's hard to have hope. But without hope, you can't get to that other side of action. And so I'm hopeful.
That's such a beautiful answer. Thank you.
So important to share, at this time, something like that. Also, because I think we need some resilience at times, and being able to continue to fight or fight, so to speak. There's a book I've discussed before called Factfulness, that talks about the facts. It's so important, I think, to as scientists to talk about the facts. And the world in many ways is getting better, in many, for us, stillbirths are decreasing, and a lot of our outcomes are getting a little bit better over time, slowly, not as fast as we want, but they are. I think, one thing that I wanted to talk about is staying where you are is a choice, meaning, sometimes, especially these days, some of our statewide, things put restrictions on us or not. How much do we fight that? How much do we fight a system that we don't fit in? We can change this, and when maybe it's better to leave, because certain things you cannot change.
Yeah, so the concept of staying as a choice oversimplifies it, right? But it was a concept that helped me in my leadership. Sometimes it's hard to be a leader and people come to you every day with complaints, right? Very few people come to me to say, hey, Chair, good job.
You're so great. And you are. Let us tell you at least.
Very few people. I do have one or two, though, who periodically will drop me a text, like, thank you, or like, so glad to have you. But most of them, they come to you only when there's something negative. And what helped me to remain compassionate was to remember that despite these things that they're unhappy with, they continue to choose to be here, right? That being here in this department with me is a choice. Caring for our sick patients is a choice because they can choose to go across town to the other center, make more money. Although it comes with a cost, right? Remember what we talked about earlier, but they could choose that. It also helped me to have perspective to say, like, when I'm unhappy with this job, to say, I choose to be here. I have agency in this. And so in some of these instances, I choose to be here. Are there people who don't have a choice? Absolutely. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about, so I'm not, so imagine this is a concept not built for 1 or 2 days post-election, right? This is a concept of sort of, for a lot of us, whether it's MFMs or physicians or whatever, that you are choosing a physician, you are choosing a lifestyle. For a lot of people, they have choice, not everybody. And so recognizing where you have choice, and saying, okay, this is the choice that I make, therefore I'm going to lean in, or I'm going to, really work with this choice, or recognize that I made this choice. It drives me nuts when you have people who will say day after day, they're miserable, they're unhappy. And then I say, well, then change it, right? Where, I clearly see they have the ability to change it. And I have a friend who was like that, and for more than 2 years, she complained about how unhappy she was, and then finally she changed it, and she got a different job. And I was so proud of her too, because it is scary to do that. But staying is a choice, right? So staying in something you're unhappy with is a choice. And so I think it's just really important for people to understand that, and for leaders to understand your people are choosing you. And I'm great. I have a lot of gratitude that people have chosen to stay, even when it got hard, whether it's through COVID or, we have a high volume right now, right? A lot of academic centers are experiencing, or quaternary centers are experiencing. The patients are getting sicker. It's harder to do the work day to day. I'm grateful that our faculty continue to choose to do the work.
Beautifully said.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think we're probably running low on time. Is right, Vince? I think I was wondering if we might, we still got 5 minutes, because I was going to see if Dr. Judette has, any closing, wonderful messages or inspiring messages you want to leave for our listeners, for our, young MFMs, aspiring MFMs, because you shared so much wisdom in this past hour. It's wonderful, but I feel like there's so much more to come out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just living my life, right? I'm going through, along the way, I'm trying to be mindful that I do things that are fun, that I enjoy, where I can. The crappy parts of life are going to come regardless, right? You don't choose them. Things will happen to you. I think you balance it by being mindful of the choices you make and the things that you say yes to. I've never been a fan of the whole saying no, right? I got to where I got because I said yes a lot. And because of that, I've had a lot of really rich experiences. Now, there are some experiences that then when my term was up, I said, no, thank you to continuing, that I had the experience, I gained the knowledge, and the knowledge that I gained was that I did not enjoy that. But I lean into saying yes often because of those experiences. And you just need to decide for yourself, if you have an opportunity, what will you get out of it? How does it help you achieve those goals that you have? How does it help you, how does it address your why? And does it even? If it does, then maybe the answer is yes. And sometimes maybe the answer is no.
Yeah. No,
This
wow.
is so inspiring, Judette. I cannot thank you enough as we
How
wrap
am I
this up.
inspiring you, Vince?
No, I mean, yes, hopeful, positivity. I mean, I couldn't have asked for any, but I got happier during this hour with you, Judette. So, and thank you enough for joining us, Kavita. If you want to wrap it up, it's been a pleasure and an honor, really, Judette.
No, absolutely.
The more I know you, the more I am.
No, thank you both so much. And Judette, you're right. Like, I think the whole theme that you highlighted in this whole talk for, it's hope, it's gratitude, and it's making the right choices for yourself. And I think using and getting to know yourself. So for our listeners, I think that's kind of like a little beautiful message that you got to personalize for you and cultivate that journey. But remember that life and circumstances around us are going to get hard, like what we're currently going through, but remaining hopeful and finding gratitude in these moments. And remember, you always have the power to choose. So choose what's right for you and the world around you. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.